Ladies and gentlemen, episode 15 of Let's Talk 20's. The first episode with the video, the webcams on, is released on YouTube. And I think people actually like that. A few people text me and say that they like seeing our faces and they thought it added a little bit more to the content. So that's awesome. So moving forward, we're going to try to keep them on and give the people what they want. So for episode 15 here, the topic is going to be expectations versus reality, what that means for people in their 20s, how sometimes our expectations can be above or below the reality of a situation, and how to kind of deal with that, balance or dilemma, some would say. So, fellas, how we doing? First off, how we doing? What's going on?
Man, I'm feeling great. I don't know about y'all. I'm ready to dive into this.
Let's
I know
do
this
it.
is a great one.
Absolutely. Connor, what about you, man?
Yeah, good. Had a long day at work.
Wake it up.
Long day at work. It's going to be nice to talk about stuff that matters a little more. So it'll be nice to just connect with you fellas and all our lovely listeners out there and take a break from it all. So
Absolutely. That's what this is
looking forward
about.
to it.
Oh, man, yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. So to kind of start off with you guys, the topic for today, expectations versus reality. Why is that important to you, or what does this topic specifically mean to you? And Connor, if you want to go ahead and start, and then we'll have GT follow.
Expectations versus reality definitely has, especially recently with everything that I've been going through, it's made me think back on, I guess, for those who don't know, I just got out of a relationship and I'm just picking up the pieces of my life right now, kind of looking back on myself in the past few years, how I made these decisions to get here and what my thought process was to get here. Turns out there wasn't much of a thought process, but I can get to that in another episode. But point being, I remember thinking about what I was expecting for myself after I graduated high school and was going on to college. I wanted to get my degree in something that I cared about. I wanted to get into a relationship. I wanted to secure all of that and then eventually have kids and get married. And, I had all these expectations and this outline for what I thought was going to happen. And I had the outline of what typically happens, but I didn't know what was going to happen with myself. And of course, as most people find out, reality is very different from what your expectations are. Especially for me, college, I thought was going to be the place that was going to solve my problems of not knowing what I wanted to do with my life. That didn't turn out to be true at all, because I'm finding out now I didn't pursue as much as I probably should have in college. It's more of an internal thing that I need to work on rather than some kind of external force fixing it for me, for example. So I had this expectation that this big external thing would fix it. Same thing with a relationship. I had this expectation that when I got into this relationship, I was going to be happy. I was going to be, providing for somebody bigger than myself and committing to something that wasn't just for me. And while it was great in a lot of ways, there was that whole reality check where I realized that I just wasn't happy myself in general. And I just haven't been for a long time. And I had such an idea and a vision for what my expectations were going to be that I let it cloud what the actual reality of it was. And I didn't live day to day, basically. And I think when you have expectations, not always, I think it's sometimes healthy to have expectations. But for me, I know that it's important to me because recently I'm trying to not have as many expectations, and I'm trying to live more day to day in the reality of what's actually going on. And that's been much more helpful. It's also been way more difficult because I've never done that before. So it's important for me because I lived in my head a lot of what was going to happen rather than focus on where life actually is, which is your current reality now. So that's, at least for right now, that's why it's such a big, important part of my life, I would say.
Yeah, easier said than done. Easier said than done, especially the last part you said about not living through expectations and just living, kind of going with the flow and living day to day, being present, which is something I've mentioned several times throughout the last episodes. But once you get to that point, and it's never a perfect thing, you'll never 100% have that down. But once you're able to get more familiar with that, it just makes everything more enjoyable. You appreciate things more, et cetera, et cetera. And that's probably will be another topic in the future for sure. But GT, what you have to add to my question?
Man, for me personally, completely agree with what Connor said. It is healthy in some regards to have some expectations, but I feel as if when you do live by expectations, like we were talking about, you tend to not, you're not as happy than what you could be if you just, what typically people say, go with the flow and enjoy how life goes and what life throws at you, because life will throw you curveballs when you least expect it. Life's always going to challenge you both physically, mentally, emotionally, in all states, and it's gonna pop up out of nowhere because we don't control absolutely everything. And if we could, then life would be very interesting with some things, and we would just learn a different way and a whole lot. But for me personally, within baseball and me coaching and playing, I do have some expectations, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm lenient with some of my expectations because it's not a overnight thing, and it's not just within baseball, it's within life. I do have some expectations, but I don't have for every walk of life. I don't have expectations and have to accomplish this at this point, this, that. So it's not something like that, but finding out that I'm not going to per se have everything accomplished when I wanted to is tough, especially as a man. I think with society, they so many expectations for both men and women, especially on us men having your stuff figured out by this time. If you're not, you're less of a man, and society thinks less of you, and that's tough, especially in your 20s, because 20s is when we're learning. And for me, learning that just accepting where I am and being appreciative of where I am. Yeah, it might not be the expectations, but my reality is a lot more beautiful than what I might have expected it, and might be even better than what I had expectations for.
For sure.
Mhm.
For sure, that's another great point. Maybe even having expectations, but taking down the time barrier and, trying to let it happen, maybe not as forced. Some people would say maybe a little more organically can definitely be at least one step towards, not being so dead set and having high expectations. And then when you don't accomplish it, especially within a time frame, you don't feel so defeated. So moving into my next question here, what were some expectations that you had for your 20s that were not reality?
Oh man. Connor, do you want to go on this first or you want me to go?
You take it. Take it away.
I thought I expected myself to be so far within becoming the ultimate man and expecting me to make whole lots of money and having this and know this and that out through life. And I expected myself to be this and that and just add it up. And when I started to see how reality was, I could not be absolutely everything all in one. I just, it's just not possible because no one's ever going to be that person that can do absolutely everything. There's going to always be something small. And that's why there's so many different jobs. There's so many different things people can contribute to. But I expected myself to be on such a high level and to be kind of superior and for me to be like a dominant male. But realizing that I wasn't setting little goals. I was always trying to jump to the highest level without taking those steps up.
Mm-hmm.
That was my problem, and that's why sometimes I had to play catch up, which if you ever have to play catch up is no fun, especially in your 20s because it's just no fun. But even then, just to realize maybe your path is not step, step, step. Maybe you take a step, but you get knocked down. You got to go down a couple steps to go back up, and maybe you got to climb a like rock climb a wall to get up. It's just reality is going to be completely different than what you expect it to be, and that's why sometimes, like Connor said in the beginning, to just let it happen and appreciate everything, and not just appreciate the good things, but also appreciate the bad things that happen. Because sometimes, and I know that sounds bad, it doesn't seem right, but appreciating the bad stuff, you learn from a lot of that stuff. It builds character and it builds to your personality and everything. And you can know something and grow from that going forward in life.
Yeah, absolutely. Connor, what do you have to say about that?
I liked the thing that you said, GT, about like taking small steps and also thinking about like you have this goal which kind of is like in line with your expectations sometimes, and that's kind of one of my questions later, but we'll get into that. But it's like you have this like end goal in sight, and I'm sure we've talked about, enjoy the journey, don't just focus on the destination, but it does tie in with your expectations. When your expectation of what the destination is going to be like, it makes the journey feel more hollow, I guess, because you're so focused on what the destination is going to look like, what you're going to be like when you're there, but you don't focus on what it takes in the journey to get to that point. Like for me in my 20s, I thought I was going to have my, like I said, my job situation figured out, my dating situation, my romantic situation, my relationship. I thought that was going to be figured out. Now, I'm still 24, about to be 25. It doesn't mean that it can't happen in my 20s, but I thought it was going to happen by the time I left college, like a few years into my 20s. I thought I was going to completely know myself, or at least have like a crazy good foundation. As I've just like started figuring out more about how life really is and learning more, I'm just realizing that I just need to be open to being a lifelong learner at the end of the day, about myself and about everything. And that's helping me stay in check with reality more, because if I have these expectations of how things are going to turn out, but then I uncover new information that changes how that expectation is going to happen, or that how this goal is going to happen. Like, I decide that I want to go to school for something, for example, and it's in this certain state, but then I find out information that the school is not taking applicants for the major I wanted to go for. Well, my expectation was to go to the school for this certain thing, but now the reality is it's different. I have new information, so I have to pivot, and I have to be okay with the fact that it's going to pivot and it can't crush my reality. So being a lifelong learner and trying to open myself up to always being open to learning new things and new perspectives, and being open to things in the moment so that I'm always prepared for whatever the reality is going to turn out to be, has been more helpful in keeping myself grounded when life does change and I have more open expectations and more open-ended goals where it can be accomplished in many different ways. But it's really changed how I've approached my goals, how I've approached my reality, and how I've approached what to expect when I might get there and what to expect when I'm going there. And so those are a couple of the things, and that's just one of the things I've learned so far.
To quickly go off that, and then I won't be long because I do want to hear Tanner's on this. So before I got up here for it, Addison and I, my girlfriend and I, talked about this. Her small group discussion was, we can make our own plans and judge them by our narrow expectations, or we can experience life as balanced reality of the one who created it. And I was thinking about all this, and I just wanted to put that in before, because I know Tanner and I have talked about this before this podcast was even created, about how our life and how we were going. But I just wanted to put that in because what we've been talking about is ultimately on stuff like that. But I especially wanted, because I know a couple things about Tanner and his life and stuff with that and how some of this is going. But I wanted to quickly put that in there because I thought that's a very powerful thing.
Yeah, that was good. To quickly say my POV on the question, I was just gonna say how growing up, you see all the college movies, you see people say, oh, college in the 20s are the, what do they say, the golden age for you and all this and that. And man, there was some fun parts, and I know for a fact there's going to be some great moments, some great milestones and accomplishments that will be some of the biggest that I'll ever have in my life. But at the same time, it was not as, and has not been as so golden age as people thought it was, like as if no life obstacles, as if no challenges would arise. Or I don't want to say I had that mindset, like nothing would happen. But at the same time, growing up, you're excited to go to college and this and that. And sure, it's a great time, but also at the same time, you can have some challenges and life can get in the way. And the expectation of the 20s being the most fun that you'll have in your life, it may not be true for some people. Maybe the 30s are more enjoyable, or they start having a midlife crisis or quarter life crisis in their 20s. They switch things up. And by the
God
time they're in their
forbid.
30s, they're loving it more. So my next question for you guys before I let you take over for your questions is, what are some ways people in their 20s can still chase big dreams and not get discouraged by the reality of something that seems so daunting? And if you guys want me to start, I'd be more than happy to.
Why don't you,
You know
man?
what? Let's throw a curveball on this podcast. Tanner, let's get it.
So some ways people in their 20s can still chase big dreams and not get discouraged by the reality of something that seems so daunting. I think I've mentioned something along these lines in a previous episode. What I think about this is that you can still have high goals and high expectations for yourself, right? Because if you set these big goals for yourself and maybe have these high expectations, more bound to push yourself, right? You're trying to achieve something greater than if you set maybe a mediocre goal and that was your ultimate destination and you achieve that. Then it's like, okay, now what? And maybe that's not for everyone. Maybe it's just me. But for me, if I want to push myself even further and further, I have to set that borderline dream, some people would say, and try to have that as my ultimate goal so I can push myself even further. But at the same time, remaining kind of grounded and realizing that you can have all these dreams and expectations for yourself, but also realize that even if everything went smooth and you had no obstacles in your way to achieve that big goal, it would still take you a long time and a lot of hard work and effort. And unfortunately, there's too many variables for you to confidently say that nothing will stop you. There will be no delays, no setbacks, whether it's something in your control or out of your control. So having big goals, chasing big dreams, absolutely do it no matter what, but also having the expectation that there will be things that can prevent you or will try to stop you from chasing that big dream. And you just have to kind of be ready for it and not let that discourage you at the same time. Just because you had a setback, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, well, guess what? You keep doing that, you're still going forward, just maybe not at the pace that you originally expected. Which can be very discouraging for a lot of people, me included. I mean, I remember the first time where I really had that as a continuing issue, right? I just wanted to get something done and shit got in the way, life got in the way, personal things got in the way, whatever it was. And it was very discouraging, but it's all about that mindset. Like we said in our previous episodes, you just have to stay strong and push through. So that's my answer, but I want to hear what you gentlemen have to either add to that or maybe a different POV on it.
Man, after that, I thought about the popular phrase "expect the unexpected."
Yeah.
And how that's a crazy phrase because when you start to dive into it in prior episodes, how we said it, like social media, how you use it, it can be for good or bad. That phrase, I think it applies, it's the same. How you use that phrase and how you kind of give the definition, your definition to it. Expectations normally carry a negative connotation to them because people think, oh, I expect this. Oh, if it didn't happen, ugh, I'm not happy. I'm mad. I'm upset. But for me personally, I think when I might have like expect the unexpected, I only have that in the back of my mind just because I'll have like a plan ready to go about it, maybe in a different way. But it's a mental block, I think, for some people, especially in your 20s, because you are learning a lot. That's reality, because that's also you're on your own. Insurance stuff starts to become on you, depending on state, country, county, whatever, whatever, and all that is then dumped on you. You might have family members, God forbid, You might have a car, you might be in an accident or whatever. And that's something that I've is admirable and very inspiring is your dad, Tanner. Because and especially I think about that phrase, like expect the unexpected, how he's been so positive with what's happened. Like how can you not look at him as like that he's a hero, like he's inspirational. Like the man lives like nothing ever happened to him. Like he lives life like he won the Mega Millions every day. He just loves life. Like how can you not look up to something like that? So, but for me personally, I have that in the back of my head just so I'm ready because the phrase "stay ready" ain't gotta get ready. But I stay positive in
Yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah, I will also quickly add before Connor has his explanation what you said about a lot of times being a mental block. I think that a lot of times it's maybe 20% physical and 80% mental for people, right? The
Yeah.
harder
Absolutely.
battles that people face, especially alone in your 20s when you're trying to figure yourself out, is up there. You know what your mindset is. So I just wanted to add. You said it, but I also wanted to reiterate it because I think that is something, especially with your expectations and reality of yourself, your ego, challenging your ego or failing your ego.
And letting your
That's
ego, putting your ego aside
yeah,
for a lot of cases.
yeah, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure. Connor, what do you have to say, buddy?
I mean, you guys pretty much covered it, so I'll make mine quick because it has to do a lot with your mental state of being and being positive to yourself, even if things don't work out the way that they're going to. I know GT kind of touched on that a little bit. I'd like to also just bring up definitely whatever your big dreams are. GT also brought up, expect the unexpected. So as much as you can make your dreams, your expectations, and goals flexible and like I kind of mentioned earlier, more overarching. So it's not so specific that if it doesn't end up working out, it doesn't mean you can't pivot into, I don't know, maybe you try to go be a doctor or something and you have all this experience, but it doesn't work out, for example, like you don't make it all the way there. It doesn't mean that you can't go pivot and do something else in the same field, right?
Then yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's being flexible with like, what your goals are. So, I can be a doctor, or I want to work in the medical field to help people. At least you're still doing something, right?
Yeah.
And I would also say you both have kind of touched on this, but at the end of the day, when you're chasing your big dreams, and if something doesn't work out, you're still you, even if it doesn't work out at the end of the day. There's nothing stopping you from making new goals. There's nothing stopping you from chasing newer dreams. There's nothing stopping you from picking yourself back up, unless of course you have really crazy circumstances. There's nothing stopping you from going on and trying at something else, because at the end of the day, my mom always told me this. I was upset about something. She said, even if at the end of the day, whatever you're upset about, if you had nobody in your life that was still here with you now, your friends, your family, your whole life situation, you yourself are still a good person, and you still can make a difference in the world if it was just you at the end of the day. So if things don't work out, if everything feels like it's crumbling around you, if you go for a big goal and it doesn't work out, you're still there. Like, it doesn't mean that you're gone. So you can pick yourself back up. And I would say that to anybody that's listening to this, and both of you, like, whatever you go for, even if it doesn't work out, you can make something different happen outside of that, because you're still you at the end of the day. It doesn't change the fact that it didn't work out. I mean, that was always advice that helped me. So that's probably all I would add on to that question.
Yeah, all great answers, honestly. The last few times, I think you have had your questions last. So, and then you say that we stole all your questions. So before we have that happen again, yeah, before we steal, I want you to go second with your questions. You're welcome.
God bless. Put me on the afterburn. It's like I'm in the back of the bus. Y'all suck. No.
Well, go ahead and throw us some good questions, baby. Let's see what you got.
So, all right. So my first question really is, why do we care so much about expectations and what others expect of us? Like, why is that such a massive thing? Because the norm back in the 1900s, people were, if you didn't fit this within society, you weren't a part of society. But especially now in the new era, in the 21st century, right?
Mm.
So why do we care so much? Why do we make that our focus on what other people think about us and expect of us?
Well, my answer is we shouldn't, but the reality of it is just that we feel the need to be validated, whether it's small things or big things. Everyone likes that warm, fuzzy feeling when they're acknowledged or complimented or, told that they're loved, or all those warm feelings, right? So I feel like that's the same thing with expectations. As much as we want to say in the back of our mind that, oh, I don't care what people think about me and this and that. Maybe it's true. Maybe you don't care as much as others, but there will always, always, always be a small part of you that does care to a certain extent about what other people think of you and what their expectations of you are. But I don't really know why we still, in this day and age, why, if there's so many different routes you can go on, and I would like to think overall, in comparison to the 1900s, like you just mentioned, I think we as a society are way more accepting of people for who they are, and we've definitely opened the doors in a lot of departments. But at the same time, with all those avenues open and everyone to find their place, or try to find their place, there's still that need to be validated. I think social media has to do with it. I think your environment that you're raised upon, I don't think that will ever really change. I don't think we'll ever get to a point where the expectations from others won't matter to everyone. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I don't know, maybe a hot take, but that's my personal thought.
I don't think it's a hot take. I mean, I'm kind of on the same boat as you. I think sometimes we can make expectations of ourselves just because of what we're supposed to be in society's eyes. About this in the Perfectly Imperfect episode, and you brought it up earlier as dude, what's expected of us in order to be stronger and make more money, for example, and we have like a certain status that we've got to uphold. Of course, women are expected, or they have been in the past, to be expected to follow this certain route, and now we're finding out that you should be able to pick whatever route you want to, because that's the lifestyle, at least in developed countries, that you can follow nowadays, right? So I think precedent and history, and with how society maybe was set up when we had to survive for a long time as civilizations, like that's probably part of it. But I also think social media and status is a big one, and comparing yourself, because if you look at shoes that maybe you have to fill, or shoes that you could fill in your life with the path that you're trying to follow, you expect that it's going to work out somewhat similarly for you. If your older brother, for example, happens to go to school and he's like a top A student, straight A student, excuse me, and he's got top grades and he's like totally killing it, and then let's say you're the next kid and you're not doing as well, you're his brother, right? Like, you should be doing just as well. You come from the same family line. Why wouldn't you do as well as him? So there's an expectation, but you're different, right? So that's just an example. I think there's a lot of factors that go into it, whether it's what your place in society is that you've chosen to put yourself in. But I think it mainly has to do with us comparing ourselves to others, because we put that expectation on ourselves.
Man, I really like that. So, just first off, to go off of what Tanner said, validation. I see a lot of people in society, they feel the need to be validated on everything, and to where, oh, if people don't approve, then I can't approve of it. Why? Life is not meant for you to go by what other people think of you. And that's what happened, like I said, in 1900s. Women, like you said, Connor, you have to fit this. You have to go about this. You can't do this. And like Tanner and you both talked about it, on little parts of it, was now, especially, we are more accepting of people. There's so many different routes. Why not even explore? Why be so cut off to something that could be time of your life, an adventure that you could have never had if you had just gone through? When they say, are all doors shut? Like, don't close an open door without even looking to see what it offers. So I think that's very, very powerful. And especially, like you said, Connor, with the straight A student, right? Now, being the oldest of three, I have a little brother and a little sister, and I kind of kept myself to high standards, but I didn't expect myself to be a straight A student because while I might not be that, I could be doing something outside of school that could be completely unique and creative that maybe someone at school who did all that stuff, straight A student, all that, now they're working a desk job. In reality, hit them because they're not doing what they want to do, and they're finding out, oh, okay, just not wasted
Hmm.
these years, just however you want to go about it.
Yeah.
So I think it's just crazy, and I think that's why, for me personally, this is why I expect, like we talked about earlier, I expect some things, but I'm not so strict on it and how, oh, it's like a checklist, a to-do list. If I don't do this by this time, then I'm a failure. If I don't do this by this time, then I'm not the real man. You can't define stuff like that. So being a little more loose, flexible, like you said earlier, on expectations. So I love it. Like that was awesome.
Cool. What do you have for another question?
Man, holy crap. I had it and now I'm starting to blank. I feel like Connor always like finds the little loopholes in some of these questions and like goes at them. So, and he's like real good at that. It's like always we go over like some things and Connor's like, "Oh, watch this." And just goes like under and like finds it and gets some. We're like, "Oh, that's a great idea. That's a great question."
Oh, that's nice.
So,
I'm blushing.
um
I'm blushing on stream.
to keep it short and not have everybody listen and go, he's just saying for a while, we're just gonna go on to Connor.
They won't know
Okay.
because I'll edit it out, baby. Take your time.
We've covered a lot. I only have one question, and I guess personally it's for you both. And I know we've kind of touched on it a little bit, but like, what's the difference for you guys between crafting goals for yourself and then having expectations and general expectations for how your life is going to turn out? How do you find the difference between something specific like a goal or just having like a general like, okay, this is the direction my life is going to go, and having that expectation? Tanner, GT. GT?
Speak at once, okay. So,
If that question made sense, so let me know if I need to reword it.
okay. I'm gonna try to navigate this in a way. Tanner's good at telling me if I'm not answering the question, as we all know. I would say, are you talking about goals that are very important and that have priority over maybe some others and steps to lead up to these major goals? Is that what you're trying
Well,
to get at?
for example, you have an expectation in your life for like maybe how much money you're going to make, or you have an expectation of when you're going to have kids or something like that, right? Or you have a general expectation, I don't know, of where you're going to live, for example. And then there's very specific goals that you set for yourself. I want to make this much money by this point. I want to make like this career switch, for example, or I want to be at this point in my career by this point. For you guys, how do you manage like setting goals so that your expectations can still stay in check so that you're not disappointing yourself? That's probably a better way to ask it.
Okay, all right. In that aspect, going about it, like I said earlier, I'm flexible with a lot of stuff and finding where they can meet in a happy balance without prioritizing maybe something that I think should come first when maybe something else is not more important, but something that could potentially happen before and help me into my next one. Just kind of not being too harsh on myself and my expectations and following it like a itinerary
Yeah.
to be accepting of where I am, what's going on in the hand I'm dealt, and to play the hand I'm dealt the best of my abilities and not go back on stuff, but make sure to play it as comfortable as I can. So just to find that happy balance between it and time management and not putting all my eggs in one basket,
Yeah.
but just being happy with what I have going on and not being too harsh on myself and what I expect of myself. And to reality might reward me for that and give me even greater, better than what I could have ever expected. So
I like that. Not being too hard on yourself. I like that. Tanner?
here we go.
Here we go. My movie is a little bit different just because I don't know if it's the things that I've already experienced or what, but my my thought process is now that, like you said, GT, the balance of having the victories but also having things that don't succeed and being satisfied with that has helped me a lot. And then when I do set these maybe small goals that are trying to lead me in a direction of what my milestones and the direction of my life that I want to take, they kind of go hand in hand in a way. I also make sure at the same time that what I am doing is what actually needs to be prioritized future instead
Right.
of prioritizing it now and saying, oh, this needs to be achieved now and it's very important now. But listen, if it's going to be at the bottom of my to-do list in 6 months because I lost interest in this hobby or the shit that I think matters now, this job that I come to find out, oh, I actually don't like it and I'm going to leave. If I put all that effort into something that I realize maybe won't have significance in the short time coming, then why am I stressing out about it now? It's just like the saying, expect unexpected, or something else I've talked about in the past episode. Sure, it's great to prioritize what's in front of you in the moment and have these small goals to achieve these shortcomings, but at the same time, if it's something that may not happen or may not matter in the short future or long future, and you'll look back and be like, why the fuck did I put all my time into, let's say, this company that I'm only going to work for the next calendar year? I know that. So why am I stressing out now and putting all my time and energy into this when maybe I'm not getting it all back or not getting enough return or I'm not being financially compensated as much as I should? Just as an example. Does that make sense?
Totally, totally agree with that. Me personally, I totally agree with that. Why put so much, like I said, why put so much into something that's not going to matter? Because especially in 20s, a lot of people say, and we've talked about this. I want to say Connor, maybe, or Tanner. I know I wasn't the one that brought this up, but you have to do some shitty jobs that you don't want to do. That's not your end job or your end, not even job, the end career or thing you want to do later on in life. But people expect, I'm going to be in this company, I'm going to do this and that. Well, guess what? Maybe something comes up to where there was a thought that you've thought about and you could take that and run with it.
Mhm.
Like, why expect so many things and live by that?
Yeah.
But I do totally agree with some expectations, the little ones, certain like obtainable ones, not these big drastic, like, oh, we'll make $5 million within the next 2 years. Okay, well, you're making about what, 60K this year? What's going on? Like, what scheme do you have planned? And can you hook a brother up? Because
Money
we all
laundering.
want to
I'm
know
just
to do
kidding.
that. But even then, I don't even want to learn that because most of the times that doesn't seem right. That's sketchy. But kind of just, you know, being accepting of stuff and like you said, if it's not going to matter, my thing is if it doesn't matter in the next year, in the next 5 years, or down the road, or here, this is great. This keeps it, and then I'll end on this one. When I'm older, I don't want to look back at it and go, well, what the hell?
What
Why
was the
the
point?
fuck? Well, yeah, what was the point?
Right.
Stressed
Right.
all this and that, like you said. What did what value did that add to my life, my career, or stuff? Why? Just why?
Yeah, but I guess what I was trying to say with my long answer up to summarize it was like, if it's something that I'm putting all this time and energy into and we're talking about how these small goals slash the direction of my life, right? If it's really not contributing to something that's benefiting the direction of life that I'm trying to provide myself, my loved ones, my girlfriend, fiance, husband, or whatever, whoever's listening, if it's relevant to you, if it's not benefiting me in the direction of the life that I'm trying to provide or obtain, like you said, GT, I'm going to look back and be like, damn, why was I prioritizing that so much? And not to say that the little things don't matter, but I had the mindset of stressing out about every little single thing on an everyday basis. That shit does a number on your mental, that does a number on your heart, all that stress.
Yep.
Like, it's just not worth it. You know what I mean? So that's what I was trying to say, long story short, but I finally found the words to summarize it. So thank you, JT, because you made me think of the perfect way to say it. So that's what I was trying to get at.
Having the proper filter on
Sure.
things to what passes by, proper things that should go by, and what you need to nip that in the bud. Know that you can't go any further.
Yeah, for sure.
What about you, Connor? Your question. Let's see what you got on this big man.
You guys covered it. Honestly, I can't really add much more because of how Tanner summarized it at the end. No, I mean, it's hard because it's like those things that you look back on and you go, why did I get there in the first place? For me, it's because the direction that I thought I was supposed to go, it didn't line up with the reality of what it actually was. And then it felt like I was wasting my time. And then it felt like all these small goals and all these small things that I did to get towards it, it was almost like, well, what really was my expectation? Was it manageable? Was it actually realistic? Was it actually rooted in reality? And was it even attainable in the first place when you look back on those things? And you have to experience like thinking about that, looking back on something and going, oh my gosh, that was a waste of time, to even know, like, of course, what we're talking about. Like, wow, that was a waste of time, and I can learn from it. So you guys, I think you guys summarized it pretty well.
Yeah, that's a really good way of saying it, and that's easier said than done. Because, like we've said, I think I've said this in the past, your priorities now will be different, or are different than what they will be in the future, right? So no matter what you do, there probably will be something that you're doing right now where you think it's a big deal or not. There probably will be something when you're 30 and look back like, fuck, I tried, but I failed because I thought this was a big deal and it wasn't. But that's really good, Connor. It's a hard balance of actively thinking of yourself in that POV, because I don't think a lot of people do that. And when they do that, it's because of a dire situation or maybe something drastic happened. You don't do that not
consistently.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And that's very hard to do. I haven't really thought about that before. You just kind of,
no, that's great.
For me, that's a huge key.
Yes, up here where it all starts.
What's your question?
Key. Yeah, what's your question, man?
I thought about it when some people give the advice of be realistic. The thinking behind that, because I think with 3 different dudes with 3 completely different lifestyles and not even thought processes, because we understand each other's thought processes, but we have the beauty in our different thought processes and how we go about things. I wanted to kind of see how you guys feel about that one, because obviously we then immediately we put expectations to realistic and those little things. When people say that, we think of an immediate thing or so a couple of different things. For you guys personally, when you hear someone tell you be realistic, how do you feel? And I see you both making that same face. I feel the same way.
I tell them fuck off. I hate that so much because then you're just limiting people, right? Every big idea that has come to be is because someone has thought unrealistically and thought that I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to make this work. And guess what? If it wasn't for them, then it wouldn't come to be. Like, let's just say Amazon, for example. The guy thought that, hey, I'm going to sell books and stuff online and people are going to be able to purchase it or rent it and yada, yada. And people are like, dude, that's a shit idea. Have you seen a video of him in 1999 where he was in his first office and he had almost like a bed sheet and spray painted Amazon on the back of it, and that was his desk, like Amazon, and he had a shitty foldable desk, and that was his office, and people were interviewing him back then with this new idea, and they were laughing at him. And now he's the richest person.
Now.
Yeah, because he had
Laugh
that vision.
now.
He had that vision. I feel like telling someone to be realistic is limiting someone's dreams and possibility and creativity to actually achieve something that how do you know what is realistic and what is not realistic? Who knows what will happen in the future, what can come true and what won't ever happen? You just don't know. I just think it's kind of shitty to tell someone, hey man, stop having those thoughts or stop thinking that you can do something because you can't. Like, you just, I don't know. I could rant about it.
You hit the nail on the head, because it's a terrible piece of advice that unfortunately I feel like I was given a lot of when I grew up, and I understand it because you didn't want to
fully accept it.
Well, it's almost like you don't want to set yourself up for disappointment, so you be realistic so you don't have to deal with what's going to happen if it doesn't work out, right? That's part of why at least the people that I've known that have told me that have said that, because I think they have tried to go for something, it hasn't worked out, and so now they say be realistic so you don't get hurt like I did. But the truth is, there was nothing wrong with dreaming big in the first place. It's just you needed to have the right expectations for what would happen if it didn't work out, which is not that your whole life falls apart if it doesn't work out. It's not like Jeff Bezos wouldn't have figured out something else to do, and he probably still would have been super successful at something else if Amazon didn't work out, right? Because of who he was as a person, and he had that vision and he had that passion for that idea. But eventually, if that didn't work out, he still had the drive and the hard work and the motivation to make it work in the first place, right? So he probably would have eventually figured something else out, maybe not as successful, but maybe successful in his own right. So there's nothing wrong with dreaming big in the first place, and there's nothing wrong with going to the moon with what you want to do. It's just about being grounded if it doesn't work out and not being unrealistic and being completely unrealistic. But like you said, imagination is the key to creativity. Every good idea has started from nothing at the end of the day. It's only been what we have thought is not possible that ends up becoming possible and becoming something amazing.
God, how do you even add to that? Because that's exactly how I feel. Because I know we've all heard that, especially when it comes to people's dreams too, their careers, to maybe a job they're doing. Oh, be realistic. I'm sure when you guys were at jobs, and it might have come out about maybe something that's going on, or you not even expected. You talked about your dream or something, right? Be realistic. You've heard it, and it just the sour taste. Just I don't like that. Especially when odds may be against you, finding the strength and willpower, courage, and everything deep inside you to bring out not the beast per se, but the inner creativity maybe, or the inner fire within you. Let that grow, and just the haters keep going. And just like a song, I know y'all know this verse, if you ain't got no haters, you ain't popping. It's one of the realest lyrics I've ever heard in my life. Because as soon as people start hating, that's when people know that you got something going on that maybe they didn't think of, like y'all said, or because you're living life or doing what they wanted to do. So why would you let those people affect what you got going? If they're hating on you, why are you thinking it's because your thing is not good? Maybe take it a different way. Maybe it's because you beat them to it, because you did the right things. Things played into your favor.
Yep.
So I totally agree. I'm not even gonna ramble on because mine's just a different version in my voice. So
yep. Well, guys, I think that what we said have covered a lot of the bases surrounding this topic. I think that we've all had a lot to add to every question, but
This
I
could
was
have been
wondering.
a 3-hour long.
It could. I mean, I could keep talking,
keep
but I wanted to
going,
know
but
if you guys have
yeah.
any closing thoughts before we wrap it up here about anything
Connor,
that we talked
wear a
about.
deeper cut shirt next time. I like that.
anything about the podcast, GT.
GT's got a nice haircut, y'all.
Man, you know, a little slick song for the boys.
GT
You
looking
know what
fresh.
I'm saying? You
Yeah,
know,
fresh.
hey, I see you trimmed it up, Tanner. Tanner's got us a little bit more trimmed up, you know, since last time. Looks good.
Here he goes.
Are you trying to
Thank
grow
you.
a Fu Manchu, Tanner?
No,
Oh, no,
actually,
you're just trying to do the full.
Oh.
funny story.
That's when he nicked himself.
I fucked up my beard line, and so I had to shave my whole beard.
Cam
So I
was
just
hot.
had the mustache and goatee going, and I was
The
so mad, bro.
Heisenberg. Get this going. You got the Heisenberg.
Cam did
Yeah.
not like that.
Cam
was
does not like that.
heated.
She was heated, bro. And it really makes me reevaluate, how she loves me.
Expectations, reality.
Here's
Her
the reality.
needs to be put in check.
I'm not gonna have a
reality.
full beard for the next 50 years of my life. I'm gonna switch it up on you, and you're gonna have to deal with it because it's my face. Yeah. Anyways, well, if you guys don't have any closing thoughts, I will just wrap it up here. I will say that the expectations versus reality topic is something that whether you want to think about it or not, it will eventually, be something that you're going to have to sit down and think about, whether it's in times of failures or in times of success. What did you do right? What did you do wrong? And I think especially in your 20s, it is the decade for you to fuck up and for you to find out who you are yourself and to figure out what you want to do with your life and everything like that. And so I say, be you, go for the moon.
Fuck what people say.
Fuck what people say. Do what you want to do. The reality is whatever you want the reality to be. And I'm just gonna leave it at that. I think we've covered everything. I think people are gonna enjoy this episode. And gentlemen, I appreciate being on this episode. We're gonna close it out here. So
awesome.
Until next time, we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thank you for listening to another episode of Let's Talk 20s. We'll catch y'all soon.